It's just pushing another.
So, welcome to our December or holiday version of Transit Riders Council, if you prefer.
Mhm.
Hope everybody is feeling well and recovering from the snowstorm, as I am.
In North Dakota, we call it a snowfall.
Snowfall, okay.
Oh, why Hanukkah?
No, here we call it a nor'easter.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it was, yeah.
Minnesota, we call it nothing.
Right. Yeah, it's not always a nor'easter when it snows, but it was a gale. That was a gale.
Well,
Yeah.
when it's
Well.
a big storm and
It
it's
was
a
GAIL.
it's called a nor'easter.
Yeah, okay.
So may we have an approval of today's agenda?
Make a motion
I
to
so
approve.
move.
All right, any objections? Okay, how about the minutes? Any corrections or additions?
Andrew, I'd like to make a motion for the minutes to be approved and happy holidays.
I think we just have to do the minutes, then we'll do the happy holidays after, okay?
Well, either way, I make a motion to approve it.
All right,
I
is there a second?
I
Okay,
second.
wonderful. Any objections? All right, let me go into the board report. If you haven't already all seen this on television or on news clips today, or in papers, if you were able to get papers delivered.
Andrew, you can
So
also
yesterday,
watch
the
the
board.
board on YouTube. You can
Oh,
watch.
okay,
everybody
yeah,
can
you could have watched the board meeting, right? Anyway, the board approved its 2021 budget with an assumption of 4.5 billion in federal support.
Wow.
Four.
Yes. Today is the day, I believe, that the MTA will be closing on their latest $2.9 billion version of the federal loans they got through the MLF Municipal Liquidity Facility. That program does sunset at the end of this year. That might be a good thing because we cannot keep borrowing as we are. As I just said, it assumes 4.5 billion in federal aid. There are some signs that could be coming, although there is still some disagreement between House and Senate members on what should be in this latest stimulus bill. There are indications that it will likely be passed before the end of this week, which is by tomorrow, hopefully, as most legislators would like to be going home to their home districts for the holidays, although it will be anything but a normal holiday time. When I say we assume the 4.5 billion, there are some positive signs emanating from Washington, and the recent announcement yesterday of Mayor Pete Buttigieg of South Bend, Indiana, to be transportation secretary bodes well, I think, for New York. I think Trudy can give us a little more info on this, as she actually knows Mayor Pete. Trudy, want to say a few items?
Oh, you want me to talk about it now? First of all, there are more than good signs, because Mitch McConnell is now on board and he has said that there is going to be a law, and he has basically agreed to their compromise. So at least that's as of this morning, as of about an hour ago. So it's a good sign. There is the big hang up, but they're overcoming it, is that there is not money directed to cities and states. But the way they're overcoming this is showing that how in different categories that they are giving money, it is basically going to the cities and the states. And that includes what they're calling infrastructure, but which is really transportation, or as close, money for transit and for transit, but they call it infrastructure, which is basically what Mayor Pete, I got to stop calling him Mayor Pete, and now I call him Secretary Pete as of yesterday. But anyway, yes, I do know him, and I was on the phone yesterday with some of his people who called me, because he will be the first one to admit that he doesn't know much about big city mass transit. So they asked me if I would sort of be a helpmate or a kitchen cabinet, as one of them called it. Just to clear up, because I also got calls from people saying, well, am I going to get a job? Am I looking for a job? Absolutely not. I am a retired old lady, and my contact with mass transit and everything is being part of you. But I do have
So you're not moving to Washington, right?
I'm not, no, but I could have stayed in New York and, been regional hoo-ha, which is what we've always had, regional director or whatever. But I'm not moving to Washington. Been there, done that. And I, not anything, but you are right in saying that I do have a direct connection there. I am just thrilled.
Well,
He
that's
is
good.
absolutely wonderful. He is absolutely wonderful, and he really cares. And his big thing has always been what both he and President-elect Biden call infrastructure. But as you know, we also has, as I said in my testimony, that we have a president who is a mass transit and a transportation advocate. I mean, I won't go into all the details, Andrew. I think I've told it to you about why he
You
is
have.
so close to Amtrak. Not just that he uses it to commute, but for other reasons.
Yes,
So
yes. That's good news.
He really,
And he comes from a state that used to have daily train service to Chicago and New York, and now is tri-weekly.
Pete, I was just talking about. I was just talking about President-elect Joe, not Mayor Pete, about the closeness to Amtrak. Oh no, you are absolutely right that he cares about, but he cares about mass transit, even though in South Bend they do not have a subway system or a mass transit. They do have buses though. And they do have a bus system there. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
But his being named transportation secretary is good for all of us. And whatever help I can be, I'm
Well,
there.
thank you. I'm sure he will need the help because this is somewhat new to him, but he's a quick learn, as I recall.
I think it's going to be, Trudy, I think it's going to be particularly beneficial to have you assisting, and if there's any research we can do, let us know.
Well, no, it's not assisting. I just said that.
Well, but being part of his kitchen cabinet, but particularly as the transportation authorization legislation is coming up due next year, and it's really important that there be a correction to the transit highway/road split that's been inequitable for so long at 80/20.
Well,
Yeah.
that'll be, if there's anything that and I think Pat knows this already also, if there's anything, Pat, by the way, has a very good relationship with him also, as does the governor. We have, I'm
Well, this all bodes well. Let's hope it all comes to be. Anyway, to continue. So yesterday's vote was basically a holiday gift to New Yorkers in that there were no fare hikes discussed and no service cuts voted on. Those come in January. There will be discussions in early to mid-January on the type of 4% yield.
Andrew, whatever you taught me, it didn't work because I got disconnected. Hello?
We hear you, Trudy.
Oh, okay. Well,
You're not disconnected.
It was, no, but I was disconnected for a few minutes.
Well, Zoom goes in and out sometimes, so maybe you're better on the phone for this meeting.
Not me, okay. Anyway, no, what I was just saying is that I don't want to play up, my role or anything, but I do know him. A lot of other people do too. And the fact that I have a direct contact there, a couple of direct contacts, and with it couldn't hurt. I told him some chicken soup solution, like my grandma used to say, like my grandma used to say, whenever anything went wrong, she'd say, have some chicken soup. And I would say, is it going to help? And she'd say, couldn't hurt.
Yes, like chicken soup, right.
So it's a chicken soup solution. Now I will get off and let you continue.
Okay, thank you. In January, there will be discussions on how the MTA will arrive at the 4% yield on fares and higher on tolls, obviously. Lisa, in her testimony at the board, mentioned the possibility of keeping fares where they are, but raising tolls. Many advocacy groups think that's a good way to go. Even some board members spoke pretty vociferously yesterday about this is not the time to raise fares. Commissioner Zuckerman of Putnam County said, you cannot make up this deficit on the backs of riders. And Commissioner Law from Suffolk County mentioned he would like to not see fares rise. And even Commissioner Schwartz mentioned we have to talk about other ways to get the money that the MTA so desperately needs.
Andrew,
Yes.
Andrew, it would be really helpful to see different kinds of analyses. And I see that we have some of our folks from government relations here as well, some different kinds of analyses that looked at the different scenarios of if you raise tolls by X%, how that could be offset by any of the anticipated or proposed fare increases. I've looked through the budget books and I've looked through the fare hearing books and the presentations, and it's, I'm going to say, challenging at best to try and come up with what, to come up with an actual proposal or recommendation, because it's hard to know. There's hard to look at apples. It looks like there's a whole bunch of grapefruits. So that would be great to know if that would be possible to find out that kind of information.
Can we find out without the fruit references?
We could. Would you like me to make a pizza instead?
That would be better.
I'll
Okay.
take a pizza.
Yeah.
That's good. As I think we mentioned last month, there are many different fare proposals on transit and the commuter rails. One that was met with some great resistance in the public testimony was the flat fare, one suburban fare, one city fare, and one suburban to city fare, which would have somebody in a very close in station, such as a Mount Vernon or a New Hyde Park or a Mineola, paying the same as somebody out in Poughkeepsie or Montauk. I mean, that did not go over real well. Perhaps there should be fewer of the suburban zones so that folks don't get creamed. I believe that the outermost zones do have a cap on what the monthly fare would be. There are proposals to do away with the weekly and monthly Metro cards, which met with quite a bit of resistance in the public testimony, which, by the way, continues next Monday. Is the last of the public hearings on the 21st.
And I will be
Who do we
speaking
have?
at that
Who do we
meeting.
have testifying at that one, Lisa?
We
will.
have, hold on, Andy. We have Francina Amparo will be testifying on behalf of Metro North, and
Okay.
Bradley Bashirs will be testifying on behalf of PCAC. So that will mean that we had 2 speakers from each council and 2 from PCAC.
Great.
And it sounds as though Andy Pollock will also be testifying.
It sounds that way. I hear
Yeah, I have a
somebody
question,
yelling in the background. Maybe we need to mute.
I was just gonna say that that's coming from Yvonne.
Yeah, it is coming from Yvonne. Anyway, so there will be discussions in January as to fares. That's going to be quite heated. And there will be discussions if we don't get federal funding by then on the horrific service cuts that were discussed for months now. But as of right now, they are on hold. And if we get the 4.5 billion, that carries us through 2021. But it still leaves an $8 billion, that's B with a billion with a B, through 2024. So obviously, we absolutely must have federal action because we can't keep going through this every year. We're good for this year, but then we have to go through this again next December. Not good for morale, not good for getting people back on the system, and not good for the New York attitude. So hopefully the new administration will do something to ease everybody's burden and give New York, which has 40% of the nation's transit riders, 40% of the federal aid instead of 16%. which is just a ridiculous formula. Did you want to say something?
I did, apologies.
I can see that.
There was there some confusion, or it would be helpful to clarify, because the number that we'd heard was the need for $12 billion through 2021. And then it became, and I look back through clips, and I've, among the advocacy folks that we speak with regularly, there was confusion voiced yesterday as well. But at the meeting yesterday, and in subsequent interviews, today, regarding the storm and into the other issues, it sounds as though it would be just fine with the $4.5 billion to take the MTA through 2021 plus an $8 billion through 24. So that language, and I know we asked Bob Ferran about it at the PCAC meeting, and he spoke about the $12 billion in losses, revenue losses from through 21. But I don't know if you can help to clarify, because I know that's a big
Difference.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Trudy. Maybe I can, because what members of the New York delegation especially were told, and I think it came out at the board meeting yesterday also, to clear that up, is that the 4 billion would help. That the 12 billion was through, and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, is to go through 24, the fiscal year, I guess 23, 24. But that we would probably need more, but that certainly the 4 billion would be sufficient to carry us through for at least the next 2 or 3 years, depending on what else goes on. But I will say again that this is all going to be recalculated and repositioned and everything once the new administration gets in, and we can really deal with the numbers.
Right. But Trudy, my point is about the messaging as much as anything else that's coming out of the MTA. So that's why I was asking Andrew to explain.
Yeah, Bob Ferran went into some detail. Over the next 4 years, they have recalculated some savings due to much less frequent use of consultants, reduced overtime, getting many projects bid on and a lower bid by some of the contracting community. Like they've combined elevator and escalator replacement in lots of capital projects, which will save them a lot of money. They've also gone to the contracting community and told them of the budget problems and asked them to see if they could come in with some lower figures, and I believe some of them have. So they are calculating some savings over the next through 2024, which could account for the $12 billion figure. Minus the 4 would leave 8 or 8 and change. Anything can change. Obviously, this doesn't take into account union settlements and lots of other things that can happen. It does, however, likely take into account the new administration's favorable outlook on congestion pricing for New York and approving that process going forward, which would obviously feed the capital program, which we need. But it will be almost a year from their okay as to the EIS and when that's submitted as to when, the panel is put together, the fees are decided by time of day and day of week, and the readers are installed and all of that. So from the time we get the okay on congestion pricing, it's likely to be a year before we see the first dollars.
Hey, Andrew,
Let's say something, Andrew. I've had my hand up for a while.
I'll be right with you, Matt. Bradley had his hand up too. You just didn't see him. Bradley, go ahead.
I just had just a clarification point. At one point, the MTA was predicting 12 billion, or I'm sorry, 16 billion that they would need by 2024. Is the savings that you just talked about, is that why it's been reduced to 12 billion?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Everything is
other-
in flux though, Bradley. You know,
The
this could
other
change
thing-
in a month or two.
The
Yeah.
other
ahead,
thing
Matt.
may be about,
Okay, Trudy, I
No,
have the floor.
excuse me, honey,
I'm
I'm giving
sorry,
you a
Matt.
report.
I didn't realize Trudy's hand. Hold on one second.
I
Go ahead,
can't, I don't
Trudy.
know how to raise my hand on this. You have to teach me how to do that also. So that's why I'm just blopping in. But I just want to
Yeah,
clarify
Trudy,
one
that's all
other
right.
thing, that it is my understanding that we may be able to, again, with the question of the bond issue, about using the projected money coming from the, well, you said from the EIS, from congestion pricing, that we may be able to, if there is some kind of legal something, that we may be able to do a bond issue before the money, you know, with the projected, using the projected money coming in, and that we may be able to get some money from this
Yeah, but
bond issue also.
that could happen once we get the federal okay. I don't know that
Yeah,
the
no, once we
interest
get
rates
the
would be
federal,
favorable until we did.
believe me that as soon as Joe and Pete come in there, we're going to get that. And I don't know if you know who Gina McCarthy is, but she has just been named as the overall domestic environmental person going over. She used to be EPA administrator, and so she will be. Is now the whole big thing for domestic environmental concerns. And it is my understanding that this is one of the first things on her menu, because they're very aware that that was held up, and they're also aware that this is money that is not going to have to come from the feds as soon as they approve the EAS or the EIS or whatever it is that they have to approve.
Well, that comes from USDOT. So that's where that would have to be through Mayor Pete's shop.
Yep.
No, but it then has to be approved by EPA. It's an environmental. There is something that EPA has to do also, the Environmental Protection Administration, because we have, it was put in as an EIS
Trudy,
or an EAS.
once DOT gives the MTA the answer to their question and the MTA submits something, that's probably when it goes to EPA for approval.
Right, exactly. But it has to, it does need EPA approval.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Can't imagine if DOT
May I
says
say
it's
something,
okay.
please, Andrew?
Go ahead.
I'm against congestion pricing, number one, and number two, President Trump is enemies with Mayor Pete Buttigieg, and I'm interested to see what Vice President-elect Kamala Harris's opinion is, having missed her interview on Good
Please,
Morning America.
I have just given a report on that, and I will be happy to talk to you offline afterwards, if you didn't understand what I said.
Well,
But can we
let
just move on?
Matt say what he wanted to say.
I said it, Andrew.
Okay, thank you. So just so you don't all think that we have nothing but good news this holiday season, in that we have a budget that doesn't speak of service cuts or fare hikes yet. That will come in January. However, it was announced that the Long Island Railroad will see some right sizing come January 25th. So look for new schedules for the Long Island Railroad effective January 25. As you probably all know, the LIRR has been running 90% of pre-pandemic service. Metro North has not. It was cut back to 60 some odd percent of pre-pandemic service. So the Long Island Railroad will be making adjustments. And once we get further details, I do believe that weekend service may be suspended on the West Hempstead branch, and weekend frequencies on the Port Washington branch may be lowered from every half hour to hourly. But when we get further details, we will know and we will share. So that's coming in January. January is going to be a very busy month, what with fare talks, getting the federal dollars in and or promised, and how we go from there. Hopefully, there'll be a lot of vaccines available, and we'll get to the most needed population as quickly as possible, so people can feel more comfortable about things. That's all I have from the board. I will add that while the capital program is in sort of suspension, there are some important improvements going on. There will be improvements to the 53rd Street tube. The Rutgers tube is still going to have some final work done to it. So F trains will be running through the Cranberry tube, the A and C line. And other work is going on, but there are 8 stations that will be getting accessibility. I sent them to Chris and Lisa yesterday, but in a nutshell, they are East 149th on the 6 in the Bronx, Dykeman on the 1 in Manhattan, 7th Avenue and 9th Street on the FG in Brooklyn, Metropolitan Avenue and Grand Street on the G and L in Brooklyn, Beach 67th Street on the A in the Rockaways in Queens, and New Dorp on the Staten Island Railway, obviously. So those stations will be getting accessibility.
In other words, new elevators that break within a week.
Hopefully not, Sharon.
Yeah.
Well,
Hopefully not.
what was interesting is that as part of the elevator contracts, there's a maintenance contract, and that it was a requirement that it be the same person that was able to perform the maintenance. And what Jano said also, which was interesting, was that they let them come up with their own design innovations. And I believe that in this case, they're going with a design that doesn't need the equipment room to the same extent that it did, so that can fit into into some tighter spaces as well. So
But
now,
Grand Central,
well, Grand Central, they took that whole bank of escalators out I think it's for a different reason, because they're all out. They're not just one out or two out. That whole entrance is closed. So that must be where.
well, they put in, they closed down the 2 that had been there. They put in these 4 brand new elevators, and now they aren't functioning.
Well, they when I was there last week, they had them covered with plastic, the whole
Yeah,
entrance.
but
But
they
it's
were
as though
brand
they're-
new about 3 months ago.
Brand
But
new.
it looks as though they're doing entrance work there, as opposed to, because that's the opposites. That looks like they're doing more work than solely on the escalators there, because
Yeah.
otherwise they would leave the stairs open.
Any idea
So-
when those are gonna be fixed, Lisa?
Matt, you got to wait to be recognized, please.
Sorry, Andrew, I'm sorry.
Please, we got Chris's hand up, but let me just add one thing. There were some other items of good news to report this holiday season, which is the Long Island Railroad and Metro North will meet the positive train control deadline of December 31st. So all stretches of the Metro North Railroad and the Long Island Railroad will be PTC ready by the end of this year. In addition, all of the MTA's facilities will be Omni ready by the end of this year, which is great news. That means including Queens and Brooklyn buses. Al Poutre gave that report yesterday. I asked him when the all ticket types will be available, and that is still spring of 2021. But every reader will be live by the end of this calendar year, which is great. It's amazing. During the pandemic, they were able to keep this up.
But you
Andrew,
mean
does
New York
that-
City Transit, not all MTA facilities.
Not
New York
the
City Transit.
commuter rails yet.
Thank you.
Talking about buses and subways. They're working on readers for for commuter rail, obviously. Yes, Chris.
Yeah, Andrew, you also left out the Livonia and Junior Street. They're also being worked on as we speak.
That's not as a result of anything new announced. They have been being worked on.
Yeah, but you know what? It's still, it's actually, it's funny thing is, what I said to you earlier before we started, it is actually on the list, the other half. But
And just as importantly, there will be an indoor transfer of one of the last places that lines crossed but did not connect.
So that's still another good news that's being done.
That
too.
leaves one place in the entire subway system where lines cross, but there's no inside connection, which is Hughes Street on the J, and M, and Broadway on the G.
And that's a
But other
challenge,
than that,
but I'll take
we're
that
making
I'll take
progress.
that one.
We
I'll
are
definitely-
absolutely making progress. Livonia Junius, the walking connection has been preserved and will be made into a 24-hour, well, hopefully 24 hours if we ever get the middle of the night service back, connection.
Mike agrees with me on this one.
Yeah, I was
But
hoping
Andrew,
we would
my-
have an announcement on that by now, but we don't.
Andrew,
Not
my
that we,
second
not
question.
that groups haven't advocated for that and electeds as well. There's also some talk of new funding sources for MTA. Obviously, gasoline tax has gotten talked up by board members as well as elected officials. There is the package tax, which Assembly Member Carroll from Brooklyn is promoting, and others. Not everybody's thrilled with that idea, but it's an idea. There is an additional stock transfer tax, a billionaire's tax. There's a lot of things being discussed as additional funding for the MTA.
Andrew, I had a second question to that also you were mentioning.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because regarding the board, one thing I know I spoke on also is, and I don't know, I hope Edith will get on later on, is there's a lot of us, and I will say some of us are here, are very upset because the 30-day pass, the 7-day pass, that also affects the reduced fare family with people with disabilities and seniors. They're very upset because they don't want to see that being discontinued. Period.
Nobody does. Well, some people do, Chris, because some people believe there's a lot of fraud in that some people are vandalizing the MetroCard vending machines. Then they're purchasing a few of these cards and then swiping people in for money. And I asked Al Poutre, who's an expert on all of this, when you see usage at a fare control area over hours and hours of repeat usage, can't you lock that card out? He says, unfortunately, with the MetroCard system, we could do that, but we don't learn of somebody using this in this non-legal way until 3 days after it occurs. With Omni, we will know it instantaneously. Also, Omni will not require these kinds of machines so that there won't be a reason to vandalize them.
Yeah.
So
but
I'm hoping that we don't lose the 7 and 30-day cards. But Omni is also going to give us the ability to do fare capping. So you could have any rides over so many rides are free.
But I agree with what you're saying, but that's all gold MetroCard. The reduced fare MetroCard only works for that person. So the
Yes.
one thing I'm just got, because I just want to be clear on the record.
It's too bad that we're thinking of doing away with something that's really good for everybody for a few bad apples, isn't it?
Speaking of Edith, she's here now. It's even.
And that PCAC helped to usher into existence too.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, I would appreciate it. It's just that I just don't think the board members thinking is he's thinking the gold MetroCard, but he's forgetting the reduced fare MetroCard customers we have individuals who used to go
Absolutely.
to work. They use that because that's part of their budget.
It also encourages discretionary use of the system. Why would we want to stop that?
Yeah, but that's why if you hear me mention about disability, it's a lot of them are upset. I know Mike will vouch with me as well as Andy. Everyone will vouch.
Well, I hope the disability community speaks up when we have these hearings on the fare options, because I certainly am going to speak to it. I do not want to see elimination of 7 and 30-day cards.
I already have. We had some people spoke last week, and I know I am already telling people to please speak again on Monday, especially elected officials.
Great.
And
Thank
that'll
you.
be in our testimony on Monday as well.
Yeah, it's not a good idea. You don't punish the majority for the reprehensible actions of a minority. You just don't do it. And hopefully there will be less fare evasion. A lot of folks are speaking to that in the hearings and everything, and that is ushering in higher fares, and it didn't have to. Okay, let us move on. Since
Andy
we have
Pollock
speakers
has a
coming.
question.
Yes,
Andy
this is
Pollock.
just a brief
I don't see his
question.
hand raised for some reason, but
It's his actual hand.
oh, it
yes,
is? People have actual hands these days?
Be done at 7th Avenue and West 53rd on the B, D, and E.
What about that station?
No, I was asking, is the elevator still going to happen?
Haven't heard anything about 7th Avenue lately, Andy. I can ask. I can
All
get
right,
back to you.
thank you.
Sure. I didn't see it on any lists of anything lately. All right. So our next item of business, Lisa, is let me just look.
Believe it's an update on where we are with, oh wait, I've got the agenda right here as well.
Yeah, I have it somewhere.
Federal funding activity updates.
That's you, right?
That is.
I thought so.
Right. So we, staff has been continuing to work with our partners in advocacy, locally and nationally, in support of federal funding. NYCTRC, which is the New York Public Transit Association, yesterday had their day of action, and we were out there putting out the message about the importance of transit, the importance of funding it, the importance of federal funding to help save transit. So we're, continuing that message. We, as a organization, PCAC, signed on to a letter in support of more equitable, a more equitable split versus the 80-20 that has currently been, that has been, I guess, the norm for in federal funding for years and years and years. So we're continuing to, to work on that. We are, that's why I was asking about the language of the 12 billion and the 4 billion and the 4.5 billion, because I think we need to regroup a little bit and get some guidance on specifically what's being asked, so that we can all, be supportive of that as we can.
Absolutely.
One of the things that Bradley has been working on is looking at, has been updating the Atlantic ticket / Freedom ticket report and proposal. As part of the fair hearings, there is the opportunity to do pilot programs or field studies without having to need to go back out to public for public input, although we do think that public input is a good thing at all times. So Bradley's been looking at the numbers, and if it's a big difference to go from we need $12 billion in 1 year and we only got 4.5 to we got 4. Well, we haven't gotten anything yet, but when that money comes through, to the agency can then think of breathing in addition to swimming as fast as it possibly can. Then we think that the time is ripe to talk about fair discounts, and that's something that's been raised by different board members. So we're running words and numbers to make that case, and hope to do something with that in early to mid-January, but in advance of the board vote. And that has
We need to mute folks, please.
I got it. And that seems that has a lot of support among folks that we've been speaking with also. So we're continuing to have that message go on. I think we'll all be happy to pivot, which is also hopefully going to be the end of that word when 2020 happens, and we'll find a new word. But to really focus on ensuring that fares are at a place where riders can afford them, that service is at a level that's maintained so that that riders can get where they need to go when they need to get there, and to continue to advocate for more information on the restoration of 24/7 subway service and what the milestones are that need to be reached.
We keep saying that over and over.
Yeah.
To no avail thus far.
To no avail thus far, but the message is, there was a group of 30 organizations that sent a letter that demanded the return of 24/7 subway service. We didn't demand that with them, although that is something that we advocate for. And it, it's been heard. There were several questions at the Q&A, the media Q&A after the board meeting yesterday in relation to that. And Sarah Feinberg said, well, it's been very difficult when our cleaners have had to go around, clean around people, because those are, there can be confrontations. And, it sort of put the focus back on that it's really in large ways about services for the unsheltered or undomiciled, and getting them off the system so it can be cleaned. So, as studies continue to show that cleaning is, of course, important to rider confidence and has shown to have benefits for the potential of reducing contact spread, that we should have more information now about the ability to make changes to bringing back some, at least condensing the closures, because it's really affecting people.
Yeah,
So.
Absolutely.
And we are continuing. Sheila's report, white paper on getting riders back on board is something that we're looking to, that looks at takes a holistic view of different studies and proposals and recommendations for getting rider trust, confidence, and trust and confidence back in the system so that they'll get back on and into transit, is something that we're coming close to releasing as well. We were hoping to do it next week, but we want to have their internal reviews, and next week is not a good week to put.
Not a good week for any sort of things like this, no.
So,
Sheila, did you want to add anything to that?
Nope, that's looking
it?
forward to its release and getting it out there so everybody can see it.
yeah. And of course, we'll
so,
share it with everybody.
Is it in its final stage now? Have we seen the final version yet?
No, so we have one more meeting yet tomorrow with
Okay.
Transit Tech Lab, and
Right.
anything we learn from there will be accommodated, will be incorporated. And I've committed to have my final edits done tomorrow. We'll get it to you when that's done, and then we'll have others read it as well. Disappointingly, despite several requests through several different channels, we've not been able to have a meeting with Mark Dowd. And I mean, obviously he's busy, he's the Chief Innovation Officer, but his input and thoughts would be very helpful. So we're going to work through information that's that's publicly available based on his comments and what he's doing. But we'll give him an opportunity to take a look at it as we have in the past. But if he's not responded to a board member and MTA HQ high-level staff, then, or to me, then, I think that he is probably otherwise engaged.
Lisa,
Yes.
can you talk to someone who works for him or within his?
I could call him directly and see if he answers me.
We've done that. We've hunted him down and seen him at events. So, and Bradley, I've done that as well. So.
Did you offer refreshments?
Yeah. How about a snow cone?
There you go.
Right?
That's good. Are you done, Lisa?
I am. Thank you.
Okay. Chris's hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because Bradley and Sheila, you guys do always an excellent job on this, and I just wanted to know, how can all of us as Transit Riders Council members help you with this? Because since Ellie has left us, and I'm still heartbroken right here still, and I can still feel it. But how can we help you guys out and support this?
Well, Chris, I think it really, as we've done in the past when we release our reports, it's really great to have our members stand up with us, whether it's a press release or an event, but also to spread the word around wherever you can, whatever channels you work in, because I know that you're involved in so many other groups and activities, that it's just basically taking the information that we supply through our press releases and whatever other information, talking points, and just really spreading the word wherever you can.
Okay,
Yeah, and thank you, Chris. Don't worry, we will not hesitate to call on you all.
Yes,
No,
you all.
I just want to be clear because and I appreciate. I just want to be, because those two, since I know Bradley and Sheila, Lisa, I have to tell you, you guys have the most working hardest PCAC staff there. It's just that since Carol, Ellie, Debbie Morris left, and it's not easy for you guys. That's why I'm just asking you if you guys need additional power boosts.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that, and we're really filling their losses. That's why it may take longer for you all to get materials that we need to share with you, because it's us doing it and putting, we're trying to do some backlog reduction and get things up on the website and put out information quickly, but we feel that loss very much.
What's this you all stuff? Are you from Southern Queens?
No, then I'd say y'all.
Oh, okay.
He said
I'm from
y'all.
Northeast.
Y'all.
Okay,
But you all of yous, how's that?
that's good.
Okay.
Do you want to do old and new business before our speakers?
Sure. Let me get the council dates up to share with you while you are all talking about that.
Talking about what exactly?
Any old or new business aside
Oh,
from
okay.
the.
Does anyone have any old
council
business they would like to bring up?
I do, Andrew.
Okay, let's hear it.
Sorry, my mic just got a little jammed. Last month, we did discuss something. You said you would get back to me on the Mass Force. And I have to tell you, we do a lot of great jobs with Mass Force and everything. And I have spoken to a lot of the communities in my part of Brooklyn, where Stewart is also near me as well. And, you look at the directions they give you of routes, how they do it. The only concern I'm seeing is they're expecting us to go from Atlantic Avenue to Stowell Avenue. But if you want to go on the F line, the farthest you go to is Bay Parkway, which they leave completely naked off the F line from Bay Parkway to Stillwell. Did we get any new updates for the Mass Force that if they're going to add Stillwell Avenue, Coney Island? Because I know
I have not gotten an answer on that yet, Chris. I did ask. I'll follow up.
Yeah,
on Mask Force. I mean, what I've found when I've done it is that there's some flexibility in where you can go and what you can do, as long as you, use the equipment and follow the directions of how to be safe, and a good representative for the MTA. Kate may have more, may want to add to that. But I mean, I think that largely, what I've colored outside the lines a little bit myself when I've done it, just to make sure we get a broad distribution.
Just to add one thing, they also changed 125th Street in Harlem, 125th Lex to Grand Central. So that's why I was asking, because they're moving the districts a little around, and so far I have not seen them doing anything with Brooklyn.
I'll find out, Chris.
All right.
Any other old business? Hearing none. How
Bert
about?
has his hand raised.
Oh, don't see it. Yeah. Oh, must be his real hand. Go ahead, Bert.
Bert, you're muted.
Ain't no Bert.
I just wanted to ask Scott if he knew there was a young man behind him raiding his refrigerator.
That's not old business. That's new business.
Yes, I did. He was taking my money too.
Oh, yeah? Okay. No, that's it.
May I show the dates, the proposed dates for
Sure.
the council dates? Thanks. So I'm sharing my screen, and you should see, please tell me you see.
We
PCAC
see.
and council proposed 2021 meeting schedule. Yes?
Can't
So,
see it very well, Lisa.
pardon me,
If
Matt?
you can zoom, you can make your screen.
Can't see it well.
There you go. Making it
Can you
larger for
enlarge
you.
it?
I just did.
Still can't
So
see it, Lisa.
You need to move the, everybody's space out of the way, Matt. Okay, the next date is, the next TRC meeting is scheduled for February 28th.
January
I'm
28th.
sorry, January 28th. You'll note that the TRC meetings are scheduled for the fourth Thursday of the month, with a handful of exceptions like Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. And that is the tradition that we've been moving toward, so that the TRC meetings are held after the board meetings, so that Andrew can provide an update on board activities.
Right.
And the PCAC meetings are scheduled March 4th, June 3rd, September 9th, and December 9th. And December 9th is later. Well, both September 9th and December 9th are later, so that they September 9th takes into consideration the Labor Day holiday, and December 9th is being pushed back 1 week so that we can get in an executive committee in advance of it.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa.
The other council meeting dates are here as well for those of you, and we'll send this out. And we'll put a,
I think it was sent out, but
No, it wasn't. sent.
well, you
Didn't
received it because of you get everything.
It
Oh,
was
okay.
sent to the executive committee.
I
Right.
get it. Okay.
Yeah, I got
So-
it.
Okay,
I don't
good.
remember that.
Yeah, I think it was sent out.
All right, good. Good
Did you
to know.
send it out
Well,
to
we're
the
going to input it
general
into the,
public, please, Lisa?
we're going to put it onto the website, so that it's up there with the information on how to join the meetings as well. Are
But
there any
Matt,
questions?
we can print it on the top of your head if you like.
No, that's
Just lean
okay,
over.
Andrew.
Okay.
Now I have to figure out how to unshare my screen. Oh, there we go. Stop sharing.
There we go.
Good.
Okay.
Are
I have matter of
anything-
old business, by the way.
Go ahead.
All right, so Andrew probably remembers when I told Larry Schwartz this back in February, but I have been a strong advocate for the buses in Queens Village Bus Depot. And once again, the Orions are having problems. So I'll give you the bus numbers that I have been noted from a regular passenger who rides the Q46. 4700 broke down on November 6th, 6881 on November 10th, and the day before Thanksgiving, 4462, all broken down on the Q46. So I'm hoping down the line, and once again, we have to keep advocating to get new buses at Queens Village Bus Depot, because once again, the Orions are going on a last limb. Again, Orion is a defunct company, and hopefully down the line, I keep saying this, hopefully these vehicles will be in the transit museum, because I have a love-hate
Orion is a
relationship
defunct
with
company, but it's a heck of a nebula. Yeah.
I still want to see the first Orion sent out to Queens Village with the 6 starting in the first number at the Transit Museum one day.
So Andy,
So-
when somebody tells you that they report these particular vehicles have broken down and are out of service, do they ever tell you if they see those particular numbers back in service, like they've been repaired?
That's a good question. I'll have to find out.
Or are they totally gone forever? Or are they repaired? We should know that.
I'm sure they're coming back on the, I'm sure they get sent back to Queens Village, and I'm sure they get repaired. So if I
I can
do hear
ask Bus
something, I will
Division
get
if
back to
those
you.
units are in service.
Yes, and again, I will get back to you if these buses are back on the 46, because I'm not too far from Union Turnpike.
Yeah, they could have been reassigned to another route, but I can find out if they're back in service.
Right, because these other buses in Queens Village also do get assigned to the Q27 most cases. So just putting that out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any new business to discuss before we go to our speakers who are hopefully with us?
They are not yet with us, but they should be on any minute, I'm hoping.
Oh.
Look, how do you like that? Ask and you shall receive. Sharon has her hand raised. Physical
Okay,
hand.
Sharon.
Sharon, you're muted.
The tap cards, will
Omni.
they, yeah, on the SBS buses, will you use them when you get on?
You will.
Okay, because there's so much non-payment of the SBS.
Yes, there is. And you may notice that on articulated buses, such as the SBSs, you'll notice there's an Omni reader at the rear doors as well.
But not on even the non-Artex, because when I was on the M96 last week,
Yeah,
Yeah,
there was
there
a
have
reader
to
there.
be.
but it says tap at front door, of course, on those
Yeah.
because,
Well, but it's right now, but you're not
Yes.
supposed to go in that way.
right, exactly.
Speaking about the Arctics, I'm sorry, I can't raise my hand. But the during the storm yesterday and the day before when it was announced, they took them off of 79th Street and put regular buses on instead on the SBS. Is that a matter of policy, but that when there is a storm warning or something like that, regular buses?
I know they took
non-articulated
buses off to put chains on, but I didn't know that they took Arctics off and put on regular length buses.
Yes,
No,
I saw that in several reports that they were taking the articulated buses off because they were
Okay.
they're more difficult to maneuver.
No, I understand that. I just wondered if that was a matter of policy or it's just done on an ad hoc basis.
I think it's made on a storm by storm basis.
Okay.
Lisa,
Okay,
this
It's how much snow is predicted, I'm guessing.
Well, I don't know. If you could find out, if you could just ask the question, if that is the regular policy or they
We
do
can
it
ask,
storm by
Judy.
storm. Thank you.
Sure.
excuse me, Andrew, the answer is actually on the YouTube page because when they had their press conference, to the storm-related kind, Craig, who's the bus president of the bus division, did mention that we're taking the long ones out of service and only using the 40 feet bus ones because
Well,
they said
my question is this a matter of policy or done on a storm by storm basis? I know what was announced.
I agree with
We will
Lisa.
ask.
It definitely
Thank
looks like
you.
a storm by storm, but I think we should double check
Let him
that.
find out. Let's
Yeah.
find
We
out.
will find out.
Thank you.
Lisa, are our speakers here?
Our speakers are indeed here.
Indeed?
Indeed.
Okay, so this is a really exciting topic. When I first was introduced to the Mercury system, which will transform the kinds of messaging that is done on the subways and perhaps on the commuter rails at some point as well. I guess we'll learn about that today. But this program, this system has the ability to tailor messaging to one particular platform in a station. Thus, like an outbound F and G train message could be broadcast, whereas on the inbound side, everything was fine. So this is really, really exciting. And it's great to have Lucy Zachman, who is the Director of MTA Advertising and Customer Experience, Molly Washam, hope I pronounced that correctly, Senior Director, Customer Communications and Strategy, and Ben Grono, Change Manager, that could be taken lots of different ways. Change Manager, MTA Advertising and Customer Experience. So welcome all, and thank you for being here.
Hi, this is Lucy. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. I'm going to share.
Can you share? Do you need me to give you that ability?
Yes, please.
All right. You should be able to do it now.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay.
Can you see my screen? The presentation?
It says Lucy has started screen sharing, but we don't see his screen. We don't. There you go.
Okay. Takes a second to get through to you. Okay, so thanks for having us. I'm Lucy. I lead advertising, and I also lead the rollout of the digital screen program. I think I met with you all last year to talk about the status of the digital screen program. So we're happy to say that we've continued work and we're continuing to roll out, and we'll update you on where we are with that. Ben has been yes, leading great change here at the MTA, helping all of our communications teams adapt to the new platform and learn it and understand how to use it. And he'll talk a little bit about what the platform does. And then Molly runs the communication center for us and is on the front lines. Her and her entire team use this on a daily basis, and she'll talk about how they've been using it and doing new types of communication with it. Okay. So just to give you some context, so we've been installing all these screens across the system. We've been in the subways, as you all know. We are on Long Island Railroad and on Metro North. A lot fewer screens and a lot fewer stations there, but still starting to have a significant presence on the railroads as well. The overall program is expected to have about 53,000 screens. In the subways, we're about 2/3, if not more, of the way through that program. We have 16,000 screens installed in stations when we're done with all of this. And generally there's 2 customer information screens at each entrance, and then a couple on the platforms as well, along with advertising screens. And you know, we also get, the MTA has 20% of the time on advertising screens. So you'll see the mask messaging, you'll see different messages from Sarah Meyer's team appearing on those screens as well to talk about getaways, to talk about safety protocols and all kinds of things like that. It's generally a 50-50 split between the customer information screens and the advertising screens, maybe a few more advertising screens, but it's pretty much an even split. Was there a question? Okay. We are also starting to install on subway trains and on Metro North and Long Island Railroad trains. Most of the train screens will be advertising screens. We don't have real-time connectivity in the subway, especially in the tunnels. Just the screens can update when they're in stations, but as we build this out, we'll start to test more and more and see how we can do with customer messaging. Okay. This is just a sampling of what some of the screens look like. You are probably familiar with the subway map, and you'll see there on the right some of the real-time messaging that happens, arrivals and status of the system. And Molly will talk a little bit more about what her team is doing around service alerts and messaging. I know they were very busy last night. These are distributed across the system. Most of these are platforms and hallways that you're seeing here, but they're in control areas, prepaid areas, and we have above ground digital urban panels that are at the top of stairways. So in situations like last night, if the train is not stopping at that station, our communications folks can tell people that before they go down into the station and waste their time waiting for a train that's not coming. So lots of great communications available there. We did take a pause early in the COVID months to kind of assess where we were and understand safety protocols. And then we started up again in July with our crews out doing a lot of catch-up work. In fact, they were going faster than usual to try and make up for the lost time. So as you see here, we pre-COVID, we had installed about 4,500 screens in 188 stations. And during the July to December timeframe that we've been in here, we've added another 1,350 screens. And we've added those screens in about 117 stations across the system. A lot of those we went back and added the above ground screens to some stations we had already been in.
Can I just ask, are there screens near elevators in stations with elevators?
We try not to be really close to things that need repair or maintenance because the two kind of clash, but we are generally within the main walkways that people pass, you know, the control area for sure. And then the prepaid.
I'm thinking for somebody who might be in a wheelchair, for instance, to not have to go all the way to the end of the platform or wherever there is a screen to learn if their train is, for instance, not running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most of the screens are not at the ends of platforms. We specifically didn't want that to happen either. So they're generally, like I said, in the prepaid area, and then immediately after you come in through the turnstiles, there's usually screens there as well.
Got it. Thank you.
Lucy, what's a DUP?
A digital urban panel, those are the screens that are above the stairways at street level.
Okay, so managing station crowding, what is the input into that?
That's the Mercury platform that you're going to see examples of here shortly. Yeah, the goal is to have Mercury manage all of the screens in our network. There's some screens, and actually I misspoke. The dupes are not yet part of the network simply because they run on a different software that our partner Outfront Media needs to move them onto this software, and that will happen in the first half of next year. So there's about, I'm going to say 70% of the screens that are out in the world are on Mercury, but there's still some that need to be moved over.
So Mercury will be able to assess whether there's crowding in a station and then transmit that information? No,
there's no assessment tools on the screens. That's just a communications tool. So if the station manager contacts the communications center, they can tell them, and then there can be messaging sparked by that. Molly will go into a little bit more on how they manage that in a second. Okay, so yeah, so the little message there, we did try to focus our restart efforts here on areas that would help the communications teams most during the hopeful very soon come back into the system for more and more riders and to communicate things just like that. Okay, this is just a map. I know it's a little bit confusing, but this is where we are today. On the left is stations that have screens, so you'll see we have a lot of coverage throughout the system. The latest restart program that we did from July to now.
I bet he took a little more room right now that you're not there.
It focused on bringing screens to some of the outer boroughs. So you'll see we added more in the Bronx, in outer areas of Brooklyn and Queens, and we'll continue to add more in those areas as we go into next year. The map on the right is where we installed these digital urban panels that are at street level. And the green ones were pre-COVID, and then the purple dots show what we've added during the last 4 to 5 months. Okay, so with that, I will turn it over now to Ben Grano, who can talk a little bit more about the actual Mercury platform and what it does. With us, Ben?
Yeah. So yeah, as Albert mentioned, I'm the change manager on this project, and the change that I focus on is the people side of change. So I've had the pleasure of working with about 70 customer communication managers at the MTA over the past year to build a tool and use the tool for communicating out to customers. Not only communicating through these new digital screens that Lucy presented, which is really exciting, but also communicating through other existing communication channels. So together we've built this tool that we've called Mercury. And the purpose of this tool is for MTA's customer communication managers to communicate out to customers to specific types of content. So the first type of content are service alerts, where we inform customers of changes to expected service. That's for the railroads, buses, and transit. And the second type of content are our digital campaigns, which are the graphical images or videos that appear on all of these new screens across the system. So we've built this tool, we've called it Mercury after the Roman god of messages, for fast, speedy messages that we want to get through to customers. And if you go to the next slide, Lucy, I have just an overview of what kind of content we publish.
Fine, 1 second.
No worries.
For some reason, my advance doesn't always advance.
Can I just ask, so you said that this is being installed at transit, commuter rail, and
buses and subways.
Buses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. So we've all been working with customer communication managers at each of those agencies. And the idea is that this tool, Mercury, is used by customer communication managers across all of those agencies as the tool for communicating or broadcasting their content through to customers. So each team uses this one tool across the MTA.
Okay, sorry about that. You see my screen?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So the two types of content that we publish through Mercury to customers, the first type are the service alerts that I mentioned. If a bus is detoured, if a train is delayed. The service alerts that are published through Mercury to customers in a typical month include approximately 1,600 service alerts that we publish on the MTA website, the MTA apps, and other third-party apps like Google Maps or Apple Map that use our data. Also in a typical month, these service alerts receive approximately 6,000 updates to the content of the alert. So the customer communication teams keep these alerts updated with the most recent relevant information. These service alerts also reach approximately 18 million inboxes. 18 million emails are sent which reach customer inboxes. So customers are able to subscribe to email updates through the MTA website. And then we send out emails, approximately 18 million a month, to these subscribed customers to tell them about the status of the services that they are interested in. We also publish in a typical month about 2,000 tweets through Mercury that customers can then read on Twitter if they are following one of our Twitter accounts. And we publish in a typical month approximately 600 service alerts on the digital screens that Lucy showcased. These 600 screen alerts are 600 different messages, but in total, because each message is displayed on more than one screen, in total, these service alerts on screens hit about 60,000 different instances of a screen alert being displayed during the month. Oh, sorry, Lucy, if you can go back. Thanks. So that's the first type of content that we publish through Mercury, service alerts to keep customers updated. The main thing that we wanted to do with this new tool, Mercury, was for this new tool to enable our communication managers to publish alerts swiftly and have those alerts to be accurate and tailored to each communication channel, so that we can get the information out fast to customers where they are. The second type of content that we publish through Mercury are our digital messaging campaigns, which you can see on the right here. There's an image, and there were some images in Lucy's slides earlier. So these digital messaging campaigns are all of our marketing, affinity, customer messaging content that is displayed on screens throughout the system. You can see here in this example, this is some affinity content that was created to showcase the work that MTA has been doing throughout COVID, but we post lots of different types of digital messages on the screens throughout the system. You've probably seen them, from wear a mask to the time of the last train arriving, to job opportunities, to promotional information. Thanks, Lucy. Okay, so just getting into that, the first type of content that we publish through Mercury to customers, and that's service alerts. So for service alerts, you can see the little person on the screen in the middle of the slide. You can imagine that little person in the middle of the screen is one of our customer communication managers. They're on their computer and they've opened up the Mercury tool that we've built, and they can enter in information about a service alert. And then that information can be swiftly published through to these communication channels where customers are waiting to know what is the service status. So the communication channels that can be reached are the web, so the website and apps, social media, Twitter, the e-alerts that we send out, so that's both email and SMS, which customers have subscribed to, and the digital screens. That's digital screens in stations and at terminals, on buses and on trains, potentially on trains in the future. Next slide, please, Lucy. Thanks. So for the second type of content, the digital messaging campaigns, so that's the graphical images or videos that we want to push out to customers. One of our customer communication managers can open up their computer, open up Mercury, and swiftly and directly publish these images and videos through to digital screens across the system. So for subways, we have screens inside stations and the street level signage, or the dupes, as you just discussed, and screens on train cars. We also have screens across Metro North, both in Grand Central Terminal and at the outlying stations. We have screens on buses coming soon. And for Long Island Railroad, we have screens at the terminals and outlying stations as well.
So on these, Ben, on these alerts that you mentioned, if somebody is low vision and can't see, for instance, the screens, how would they learn of this? Are there audio announcements at all, or?
Lucy, if you could go back one slide. Thank you. So Albert, you can see on this slide, when an alert is published, it reaches multiple communication channels. So if people have different types of needs and they prefer one communication channel over another, they can subscribe or check the communication channel of their preference. When a service alert is published, it can go out to all these channels. It can be tailored and tweaked for each channel, but it's going to reach each channel.
Does it go to each channel in real time?
That's correct, yep. So maybe there's a 1 or 2 minute lag in some cases. The one that's interesting to point out with your question, when alerts are published on the web, obviously that's a very accessible channel, and MTA are looking into how we can make that even more accessible in the future as well. We have a project going on looking at how we can further enhance the MTA app and the MTA website so that all the content on those sites, including these service alerts, can be accessed even more conveniently by people with different needs.
And one of the things I don't see on this slide, I see train time, I don't see the live map. Is that also going to be incorporated onto the live map?
Oh, great point. Yes, that's right. I think the live map is currently, we're working on that at the moment. But yes, that is in scope. I'm not sure of the date of which that will start displaying there. That's in scope, definitely.
Great. Chris, did you have a question about this?
I do. May I ask a question? I don't understand the communications managers. Does each line have one assigned? I mean, how do they get the information that a station is closing or a train is delayed or something? Who are they?
So if you hold that thought for just a few minutes, and we'll turn it over to Molly Washam, who can address that. She managed.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. Yeah, that's an excellent question and a great segue to Molly Washam. I'll hand over to Molly now. Molly heads one of the customer communication teams and can really get into the detail of that. Thank you, Molly, so much.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy and Ben. And thank you all for having us.
Excuse me, could I ask a question before we get to this?
Sure.
Yeah, this is about the audio alerts, and specifically in the stations. It's been my experience, and maybe it's going to change, that when I'm in the 77th Street station and it has to do with the 4 or 5 or 6 line, there are announcements that come over about the L train or the E train or something that has no relevance to the people who are in that station on the 4, 5, or 6. And I'm just wondering, are they directed specifically to the stations or the lines that they have to do with? Or is there like overall audio announcements about any difficulties in the system?
That's a good question. Primarily, announcements are targeted to the lines where there are disruptions, but you may hear announcements about disruptions to lines that are either adjacent to that service or that connect with that service, or we have reason to believe through rider data that that information may be relevant to the people at that station.
Well, how do you decide this? Because like when I'm at 77th Street and I hear something about happening on the L line, and the only place that that intersects is at 14th Street, and that's quite a ways from 77th Street. I'm just wondering why that would be broadcast in that station.
Sure.
Just giving you an example.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the severity of the disruption as well. So if there is, for example, no L service, then we may communicate that more broadly than we would if there were only delays, for example. Or if we're talking about the L project, which was a major long-term planned work project, then we definitely took a more kind of holistic approach to making sure that customers were informed about that project. So it depends on the severity of either the real-time disruption or the planned project, but we definitely don't want to fatigue people, and are always happy to kind of get that feedback and continue.
But also, if you learn about a problem early, that allows you to adjust your route and avoid the problem, perhaps. So it's not a bad idea.
Well, except that I've noticed that it is frustrating to people on the project who will quite verbally say, well, this train isn't coming. Why do I care? And in rather colorful language at times, why do I care about what's going on the L train?
Trudy, let me give an example. If you're at 77th Street and you were planning to go down to the L and go over to 8th Avenue.
No, I understand that, but I am telling you the reaction of passengers and customers at the station. So I'm just wondering on what basis the decisions are made is it on an ongoing basis that any line that has any interaction with another line, you'll be told about the service problems on that line, immediate service problems, or is it done on an ad hoc basis, or is there any kind of program for where and when the service alerts, especially the audio service alerts, go out?
There's definitely an art and a science to it. We do have protocols and we do have guidelines around the geographic coverage of our different communications channels as they relate to different types of disruptions. That said, there are many, many factors that add up to a disruption that can make a disruption either more or less significant. And so we kind of weigh those pieces in real time as well.
And if I could add, maybe you could incorporate this on some of the screens, and maybe you intend to. Much as on the live map, if you go to the grid, which shows all the lines, any line that is experiencing any kind of problem flashes, and then you touch it to investigate what the problem is. Perhaps that could be done, and that avoid all of the extraneous announcements, and people can see it on their screen and touch the screen and see what the problem is.
I'm just talking about just the audio announcements that come over the loudspeakers in the stations, not dealing with the screens or anything else, just big audio announcements popping out.
I'm saying, Trudy, maybe you can do away with them if you have these screens.
Yeah, but then it's educating people to go look at the screens.
Anyway, please continue. Thank you.
Of course. Does anyone have a hard stop at 1:30?
No.
Okay.
We're here for you.
Great. Ben kind of gave an overview of the different communications types and channels that we use Mercury to publish. But I'm going to show you a little bit about what that looks like and how we use it Again, I'm Molly Washam. I'm the Senior Director of Customer Communications and Strategy at New York City Transit. So I'm really going to be talking about Transit's use of Mercury and specifically around real-time communications, but there's a lot more where that comes from. So the first piece is kind of insider info, but it really, it was important that we got this stuff right, because if we didn't, then the other benefits of Mercury really wouldn't shine through. So Mercury is a modern software, which is hard to come by at the MTA, or was in the past, I should say. It is secure and reliable. So we utilize single sign-on, which means we log in through our Outlook email addresses. It also utilizes Twitter API, so it speaks directly to Twitter in new and unique ways to so that we don't have to log into Twitter all the time. So we don't have our team of 25 people around the clock managing multiple different passwords, logging into Twitter accounts with millions of followers. All of these interactions create security risk, and Mercury has eliminated that, which is great. Additionally, uptime, meaning the percentage of time that Mercury is functional, fully functional, is 99.9%, which you pretty much can't beat. And we also have full support from MTA-IT for any disruptions, which have thankfully been few and far between. Next slide. So one of the kind of organizing principles for Mercury and the development of this platform, and also the way that it's really added value to our work so far, is that it creates data. So if you look at the screenshot on this slide, you'll see that you see the A bullet and the F subway bullet. And then you see the stations are kind of highlighted, and you see this drop-down menu where you can select another station name. That means that all of those components are tagged. And so it's creating data that then gets ingested by our GTFS RT feed. So that's basically the data feed that says what our trains and buses are doing at any given moment. So this really creates a whole new world of opportunity for us to provide more granular information and better target information so that people get the information they need when and where they need it. So Trudy and Andrew, to your points, this is just the beginning of our path to providing very granular information. And that's both for us, for mta.info and MyMTA, but also, GTFS is a public resource. And so, third-party developers use this information as well and can create new and interesting tools with this as well. Next slide. So this is what it looks like when you log into Mercury. I don't know if anyone on the call has ever used a content management system. Most of them do not look like this. They have very small print, very kind of square, small check boxes. You really have to hunch over to see what's on your screen a lot of the time. So just from the start, this is not your average content management system. It's a huge improvement from what we were previously using, which was about a decade old. But, Mercury really, as you can see, is an intuitive design, and it allows us to use technology to our advantage. So we're no longer doing a lot of really manual tasks that add up to time that could be better spent communicating with customers, and that ultimately ends up creating latency in our real-time service messaging. I think it's interesting. I'll talk about this a little bit more, but there's this perception that technology just kind of happens, but there's actually a lot of work that happens in the background in order to get information and verify it and then publish it. And Mercury has streamlined the publishing piece so that we can get information out as quickly as possible. So just a few examples of things that we were previously doing and that we're no longer doing. You know, we would have to type out unique email subject lines for every single alert. Mercury, using our content strategy and also the data that we have created through those tags, automatically populates a subject line so that we don't have to type that in. So that's some time savings.
Yeah.
It also captures metadata. So, you know, the start time of an incident, the end time of an incident, all of which we capture for auditing purposes and quality assurance purposes. You know, we were previously keeping a record in a spreadsheet. In fact, when I arrived, we were keeping it in a physical book. And so that's obviously a time savings because Mercury just captures that for us already. And, you know, on the campaign side, so the screens, the creative campaigns, the PSAs, things like that, you know, there was previously a very arduous process involving spreadsheets and various FTP upload sites. And this is now one system and one place where we can kind of upload and maintain our creative assets so that we can focus more on creating compelling content that customers need to know about. So this is just a slide to show that the spreadsheet is real. Our team used to have to manually type in all of this information that that Mercury can now just capture for us. So again, using technology to our advantage to allow our employees to spend their time and brilliant minds focusing on customer communications. We told Lucy that it was a core requirement to kill this spreadsheet, and she is very close to delivering on that. So that in and of itself is very exciting with Mercury.
Can you take a question?
Sure.
Chris, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to wait till he's finished. She finished.
Oh, okay, great.
As a courtesy and respect.
Yeah. Okay. So as we were talking about, you know, there's a lot of work that happens in the back end in order to get information on the website to the screens and stations, and not having to do all of those manual tasks, which really add up, allow us to focus on getting that information and verifying it and making it as helpful and clear as possible so that customers can make informed decisions about their travel, which we feel is, you know, more important than ever when making decisions about travel is also in some ways a decision about personal health. So what you're seeing on this slide is on the left-hand side, it's one of the tools that we use to monitor subway service. So DCU, my real-time communications team, regularly monitors subway system health using a host of different channels. This is one that we call the subway speed map or Viz tool. And it's kind of a good first alert system for us to see that something may need to be further investigated. You see it's nicely color coded, so it's easy for us to kind of assess the severity of something. But you know, we use this, we use a couple other web-based applications, and we also listen to the internal radio system, which is called the 6Wire. So we have a lot of different inputs giving us information about what, you know, what is happening with train service at any given time.
Can I just say something, please? On this slide that you have here, on A line southbound, it doesn't really say, I can figure it out, but it doesn't say whether it's Rockaway Avenue or Rockaway Boulevard.
That's a great point. The Rockaways get really tricky because there are many stations with Rockaway in the title.
And neither of those are in the Rockaways, actually. One's in Brooklyn and one's in Queens, but.
Sure. This is actually an internal monitoring tool that we use. So, you know, I would love to make something like this public, but we would have to make some tweaks to make it appropriate to.
As long as your people know which Rockaway they're talking about.
Yeah, you can hover over, this is an interactive map, so you can
Okay.
hover over it and it gives you a little bit more information. But to the question about how do we know what's happening with train service, we use this map, we use a radio system. We get reports from social media sometimes, so I'm proud to say that happens less frequently now than it did when I started a few years ago. But we take all of these inputs and then we figure out what that means for customers and how to communicate it as helpfully and hopefully succinctly as possible. And that's then where Mercury comes in. So after we've written our message, we use Mercury to populate our content for mta.info, MyMTA. Again, it creates the data feed that populates third-party applications. We publish to Twitter, NYCT Subway, and NYCT Bus. And we also send email and text alerts. And as of the last year or so, we've been able to now post real-time service information to screens in the subway system, which is just a huge step forward. So cutting the latency with our publishing tool allows us to do this manual work and do it more in a more sophisticated way and in a more comprehensive way. The example on the right side of the screen is one way that we, were able, with the freed up capacity at the height of the pandemic, to really spend time monitoring subway service to try to adjust our communications program to meet the current needs of customers. So as you all know, in the spring, the headways looked very different than they do now. And it wasn't always consistent. And our team was able to really focus energy on knowing what was happening in the system and making sure that customers knew down to the minute how frequently they should expect trains and in what direction. So in this example, you see 4 trains were running every 20 to 30 minutes as part of our essential service plan. But we also identified that 1 train wasn't able to run. And so we let customers know that there was a gap that was basically twice the headway of that current schedule. Next slide.
So congestion there means train congestion, not people congestion.
Yes, that means train congestion.
Okay, thank you.
On the kind of marketing, PSA, and screen side of things, this is an example of ways that we've just been able to maintain a more nimble communications program. Like I said, there were previously multiple different processes to get these assets posted to screens, and now with one streamlined workflow, we're able to keep our campaigns fresh and current and relevant. So on the left side, you see a screen graphic that we created in the spring when we were really telling people that only essential workers should be traveling in the transit system. And then on the right side, you see a screen that's more recent, showing our mask figures with winter accessories like scarves and hats and stuff like that. And then I mentioned earlier that Mercury helps us create data. So this is a few examples of where that data appears. On the left-hand side, that's a screenshot of the MyMTA app. We designate a service status for each subway line and bus route. And that then shows on the home page or home screen of the app. If you click on those subway bullets, it expands and you can see the specific alerts for each subway line. In the middle, this is Google Maps. So third-party maps, including Google Maps, Apple Maps, like most of the major players ingest the data that we're creating in Mercury and then either present it exactly as is or modify it for their platform. So in the middle where you see modified schedule for alerts. If you tap on that, it'll then pull up the content that we're creating and posting through Mercury. And then on the right side, this is a station dashboard. So this is a great example of a way that we've been able to provide more targeted information that is relevant to people where they are. This appears on screens on platforms in stations. At the top is where you see the service alerts that are published through Mercury, but this screen design actually pulls in data from other sources, like our elevator and escalator database. So, you know, users or customers, riders are able to see if there's any impacts to both the subway service as well as the elevator service on their trips. And then this is a look at something that we're working on. So a kind of evolution of creating this data is the ability to tag stations that are affected by a particular disruption. So you see here, pulling from the example we had earlier, that A trains are running on the F line between J Street, Metrotech, and West 4th Street, Washington Square. In the future, we'll be able to select which specific stations are impacted by that disruption, and then decide how to display that information differently based on location or channel. So the web development is pretty much there, I think, but there's a lot of kind of decision making we have to do, some logic we have to build into our workflows to determine what it means for a station to be impacted and how that information will display differently on screens versus on the website versus on, you know, a strip map, if we're able to tag an alert to a specific station on the web, for example. So that's an exciting update that I hope we'll be able to roll out next year. Next slide. And then to finish, you know, I think it's clear that I think Mercury is a really incredible tool and has added a lot of value to our workflows and helped us streamline and find some efficiencies already. But it is still really an MVP at this stage. And that's development parlance for, well, I'm thinking most valuable player right now. So I can't remember what it's.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Minimum viable product. So basically it's, you know, it meets our core requirements, but there's so much more potential that, that the Mercury platform has that we are hopeful to utilize in the future. So in the winter of 2021, we have real-time bus alerts rolling out on Mercury. Currently, New York City Transit is only using Mercury for the subways. And we're also rolling out planned work alerts through Mercury. We also have a lengthy wish list of features, but some of our top priorities, if we are able to get funding beyond what is currently scoped, are parent-child relationships. So that means we would be able to create a primary message for an event and then multiple unique messages tied to that. So, you know, that could mean that we have a kind of headline for a service disruption and then different messages for different stations. It could go a lot of different ways, but it would give us a lot of flexibility. And that's, I think, the kind of top priority for transit and the railroads. Some other pieces, emergency screen management. So right now, you know, we have the content that's populated through Mercury, which is mostly graphics. And then there are those dashboards, like I showed you, which are not managed through Mercury. They don't need to be, they just pull in data from different sources. There's no kind of human intervention there for the most part, other than the data that we're creating. That said, during major events like this week, train arrival predictions become a little bit spotty when service is severely disrupted. So emergency screen management would allow us to own the information that's being shared on those types of screens when needed. And then another piece, and these are just 3 examples of some other directions that this could go. But another piece is higher fidelity bus data. So currently we're able to tag individual stations, and there's, you saw the drop down list. On the bus side, it's a little bit trickier. Obviously, there's not infinite, but less finite set of options to tag different bus stops. But it would give us the ability to both, create that data for web development, but also, look back and do some QA and analysis of kind of trouble service areas or length of disruptions in particular locations and things like that. So that's what's on the horizon, or hopefully on the horizon with Mercury. The next slide just says thank you. I would love to hear though, what you think about the current functionality and if there are pieces of functionality that you would really like to see.
Thank you so much. This is really cool. And I think it's going to add to the information that riders get and need. Chris, you had a question?
Yes, I have 2 questions. Number one, the one thing I'm looking at the maps and I'm seeing the maps, I have to say they're really good for a customer, but I don't see information that tells us, for example, when the train is down, there are times we don't see that accessibility apps are not added in as well. And I really don't see that much. It's something that I hope you guys will be working with as the ACTA committee does, because something we are trying to accomplish is, if say like you mentioned earlier, if a train line is down, they don't give we've been trying to work on also accessible reroutes for customers who are in wheelchairs, walkers, or who physically cannot go up or down. That could be a senior citizen as well. We hope you guys can work on that. The second question I have is, I'm glad to see the clocks are more coming into the outside of the city, but I don't see them on certain lines like the Brighton line, the Sea Beach line, and sometimes I don't see them on the RRT lines outside. I hope you guys are going to be working on those in the near future.
So Lucy can speak to the plans to roll out screens to different locations. To the first piece about accessibility and travel alternatives during disruptions, that is something we do with our planned work alerts in real time. Thankfully, a lot of our disruptions are quick enough that that we don't have time to get to, providing that level of detail. That said, with, the streamlined workflows that we have with Mercury, and potentially, particularly in the future, as we're able to, with Mercury, you could, for example, once you tag a station, which is creating data, it could then kind of generate an insight that this is an accessible station, and therefore we should be also adding information about accessible travel. That is a bit down the road, but it's an example of the type of thing we would love to be able to do.
Thank you.
Edith has a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Edith, go ahead.
Edith, you're muted. There you go.
I love how glibly you say this is down the road. Well, it's not down the road for myself or many other people who travel daily. For example, if it tells me that the A is going as far as 135th, it doesn't tell me how the hell I'm getting out of there. And I have spent as much as 6 hours on a platform trying to get out of a station. You know, it's a little, excuse me. I would just like to point out that there are real people sitting on platforms while you talk about how it's down the road. We need better information. The information we're getting currently totally sucks. If the train is going as far as 135th, it doesn't tell me where it's going to be at 135th. It's just there. We need better information, and we need to go back to better information that's right there and then. Having all of this on websites doesn't help you when you're sitting underground and you may not have a smartphone
or signal.
I'm really sorry to give the impression that I meant it's not a priority for us, or that we're not working on it. What I meant by
priority.
What I meant by down the road was that it would require funding for additional development, and then development in and of itself takes time and resources. So unfortunately, we just don't have the funding to build this functionality right now.
But then put the information somewhere else, and not in a computer, not on a screen. I'm sitting on a platform. I need the information then and there.
So what is the alternative then? To do an audio
poster.
announcement, Edith? Is that what you're getting at?
I want to go back to remember the old signs that didn't say call 511. The old sign that told you how to get out of where you are. Finish all the black signs on the elevators that say how to get out of, if this elevator is out, what are you going to do? That has not been finished. That's information that is crucial and essential to every person using that elevator. And it's not been done. Finish one thing before you do the next 18 projects.
Molly, I have a question for you, speaking to what Edith was just talking about. What is your interaction with the help points? I know that they're not everywhere where they're needed. Maybe there's help points that are needed near elevators on the stations, but is your information, is it coordinated with the help points, and how could that help someone like Edith who needs help in the station?
That's a good point. The help point intercom is a resource. Our workflows are not especially, they are parallel, but not really integrated. But I do believe most platforms have help point intercoms. I'm a big fan of the project to add signage for travel alternatives when an elevator is down. I believe that has that project is ongoing because we fortunately added so many new elevators, and so many stations have become accessible in the last few months. So as soon as we can update that, physical signage, they're out of date again. But I'm glad to check in on the status of that project.
Thank you, Lucy. Matt, do you have a question?
Yes, I do, Andrew. What's an audit, Molly?
Sure. So when you work in a government agency, there are a number of different kind of oversight teams and organizations. So there are internal teams who survey the work of any number of different people and teams throughout the organization to make sure that they, are following protocol and make recommendations for either that they need to follow their protocol or recommendations to improve upon their protocols. So like I said, there are internal teams and external organizations like, you know, the IG office, the controller's office, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Any
I
other
have-
questions?
Yeah,
Oh,
I have
Sharon.
one.
Yeah.
And then I'll go after Sharon.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I still don't understand. Is this fully automated, or is there someone, team or something sitting somewhere running what's getting posted and what's getting managed? I'm sorry, I still don't understand.
No, it's a complicated thing. So there are people, I manage a team.
24/7,
Yes.
theoretically, if the system was running, yeah.
We have a team working 24/7. They are getting information from a radio system and from various websites to understand the current status of subway and bus service, and then writing different communications and publishing those communications through Mercury, which then feeds all of these different channels.
And is there a way, if we're somewhere and there's at a stop and there's a problem, is there a way for us to communicate with them, or for passengers to communicate with them? Or is there any possible input to them?
Yes. So in addition to publishing service information, we also field customer inquiries in real time. My team specifically fields inquiries from social media, including Twitter and Facebook, but we also recently launched on WhatsApp, which is a private messaging application. It's basically a dedicated application for text messaging, and we are looking to expand our private messaging application support to include just kind of regular text messaging as well.
Okay.
But of course, the MTA also has a call center, or you can submit feedback on the website.
Okay,
I
Lisa,
still
did
can't
you
figure
have
out
some?
how to rate. Whoops, I tapped, it said tap to speak, so can I speak?
Yep, I just wanted to say that we've got to let our guests go, and we're at 2 o'clock. So,
Well, I have one question for our guests, and I just asked our guest.
Go ahead, Trudy.
Hello? Yeah.
We hear you.
At the very beginning of the presentation, I forget who said it, you talked about urban panels. And I am wondering, are the urban panels what are outside the entrance to the subway, which are usually used for advertising? Are those supposed to also give information about what is happening below ground? Because they usually don't.
They do when we need them to. So advertising screens, we can.
Well, how do you decide if you need them? Because I have had more experiences of going, there's nothing.
Trudy, let her finish what she was saying, please.
So yeah, just as Molly was saying that she has a number of tools and her team has a lot of tools to know what the status of trains and are, we use those tools. So if Molly's team needs to put a message on an advertising screen, they will be able to eventually. Right now, we still have to use Outfront Media, our partners, to do that because, like I said, not all the screens have been transferred over to Mercury. There are screens on the stair side as opposed to the street side that do have countdown clocks and other messaging on them. On the bottom, there's a ribbon across the bottom that says the countdown clocks. So we do have 20% of that screen as well.
But you do have to go down the stairs. There is nothing street level.
No, it is street
they
level.
They are at street level, yeah.
Well,
I've seen them.
Drop to another
can I tell you that I have, Andrew, that I have not seen them, and I have had many experiences.
I've seen them right on your side of town at 86th and Lex.
Well, good. They're not at 77th and Lex or at 68th or any of the other. They're going down that line. I can tell you there are advertising panels.
I'm sorry. We've started to lose people, including our guests, because we have to thank you guys so much. Lucy
it
had to
was-
sign off. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you,
Thank
Ben
you.
and Molly, for a great presentation, and Kate for facilitating. This is really a
you.
terrific look into not just what's happening now, but the future of communication. It's
Thank
going
you
to
all.
benefit riders
Thank you.
across the entire system. So thank you so much, and for taking our questions as well. Much appreciated.
Yes, really.
Happy
Thanks
holidays.
for having us.
Happy
Happy
holidays.
holidays.
Happy New
Stay
Year.
safe.
Happy. Oh, it's snowing again, just in case
Thank you.
anybody
Oh,
missed it.
goody.
It stopped again here. Yeah.
Oh, it started again here.
Not
Nuts.
here, it's
Okay. But
All right, happy holidays to y'all.
Yes, everybody stay safe. Have a
Bye,
wonderful
thank you.
holiday.
Mwah.
happy holidays, everyone, and still happy
Yeah.
Hanukkah.
happy
Happy
and
holidays.
Festivus is next week too.
Happy
Yes.
Festivus.
Yes.
Happy
Happy Festivus.
folks.
Kwanzaa.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Good night.